While not all of you will have this access, some of you may come across confidential, sensitive, personal, and regulated data as part of your job. There are several privacy regulations that the university is required to comply with, the main one being the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. This act, better known as FERPA, is the regulation that covers most of our data, and there are a host of other privacy laws that we are required to comply with. The privacy program also has policies that define what information must be safeguarded. At its most basic level, if the information is considered protected data, everyone at the university has a responsibility to safeguard it. So what is protected data? Protected data includes student record data under FERPA, protected health information under HIPAA, non-public personal information under the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, and a host of other data types under various state, federal, and international laws. Protected data also includes sensitive, confidential, and proprietary information as defined under university policies, procedures, and guidelines. Rather than try and remember everything that needs to be protected, think of it this way. If you have access to information, and that information can, in any way, be tied to an individual, protect it. If you have been told that it is otherwise confidential or private, protect it. It's always better to overprotect than to violate a regulation. If you're not sure whether it's protected or not, ask. You can always check with your manager or supervisor, or you can contact my office directly at privacy@uvm.edu. As part of your orientation to the University of Vermont, you are going to also learn about UVM's Information Security Program, which is related but not the same as our privacy program. I like to think of it this way. If you think of information security as the lock on your front door, privacy is whether or not you choose to lock the door. Information security provides technology such as firewalls, unique usernames and passwords. However, if individuals choose to circumvent some of these controls, let's say that you share your username and password, some of these security controls won't work. It's up to each and every one of us to do everything we can to protect the personal, sensitive, and confidential information that we have been entrusted with. More information on our privacy program can be found at www.uvm.edu/compliance/privacy-program. Another section of your code that I'd like to highlight relates to conflict of interest, conflict of commitment, and nepotism. If you are involved in sponsored research, you are required to disclose conflicts under UVM's Financial Conflicts of Interest for Sponsored Research, or FCOI policy, and there are very specific requirements related to FCOI. Visit www.uvm.edu/OVPR/research-integrity for more information. Everyone else is required to disclose conflicts under UVM's Conflict of Interest, Conflict of Commitment policy. Either way, if you have a conflict, you are required to disclose it. A conflict of interest is when you or a member of your family has, or could have, a personal or financial interest that could affect your independent judgment as it relates to your university duties, or if you have a personal or financial interest that could result in personal gain or advancement at the expense of the university. And if you have a real or even a perceived conflict, it needs to be disclosed. Disclosing conflicts doesn't only protect the university, it also protects you. If you engage in external activities that interfere or could interfere with your ability to perform your university duties, you may have a conflict of commitment. And if you are in a position of power and could show favoritism or give preferential treatment to family members or to others that you are legally responsible for, that could give rise to nepotism. Conflicts of interest, conflicts of commitment, and familial relationships all need to be disclosed. Covered persons, which includes all faculty, all exempt staff, and others identified by the President, are required to disclose annually by submitting a conflict disclosure form. Covered persons are also required to update it if circumstances change during the year. But just because you're not required to submit an annual disclosure form does not mean that you do not have to disclose potential conflicts. Anyone who is not a covered person under the policy is required to disclose to their manager or supervisor as conflicts arise or as circumstances change. Just because you're not required to fill out an annual disclosure form, it does not mean that you don't have to disclose potential conflicts. Here are some examples of activities or circumstances that require disclosure. If you are in a position to make a decision to hire or promote a member of your family, you have a conflict that needs to be disclosed and managed. If you supervise, set salary or wages, if you approve time cards or employment records, or if you otherwise evaluate the job performance of a family member, you have a conflict that needs to be disclosed and managed. If you are responsible for negotiating or authorizing a contract, or if you otherwise purchase services, goods, or products from a family member, or a business owned by a family member, you have a conflict that needs to be disclosed and managed. Some conflicts are not necessarily prohibited, but they could be, and therefore also need to be disclosed. Here are a few examples. If you have a second job or provide services, such as consulting, while you're employed by UVM, this could create a conflict. If you hire other university employees or students that you oversee for non-UVM activities, you could have a conflict. If you hold a financial interest in a company or organization that competes with UVM, you could have a conflict. Again, disclosing conflicts does not mean that the arrangement is prohibited. It means that it likely needs to be managed, and disclosing it will protect both the interests of the university and will also protect you. As noted previously, if you are involved in sponsored research, you are required to disclose under UVM's FCOI policy. The Code also highlights all of our responsibilities related to the protection of university assets and UVM's policies related to the appropriate use of university resources. We all have a responsibility to make sure that we are not using university resources for our own personal use, or that UVM resources are not otherwise wasted or used inappropriately. Using office supplies for your home-based business or taking them home for your own personal use, expensing travel and meals that are not related to university business, falsifying time records, and using your UVM email to conduct non-university business are all examples of violations. And that is not all. There are other risk areas that the Code addresses, and I encourage you to read it. If you find yourself asking, is this right? Am I okay with this? Or, when you're not sure what to do, remember that you are not alone. Whatever the reason, if it's not sitting right with you, or if you need clarification on something, reach out to my office at compliance@uvm.edu. Thank you for taking the time to help UVM maintain a culture of compliance, and more importantly, to do the right thing even when nobody is watching. So the bottom line to all of this talk is we all play a role in walking the walk. When you're faced with a problem, a dilemma of sorts, look to your code, speak up, file reports. We'll fix it together, it'll be a good catch. Instead of stomping out a fire, we can blow out a match. If you have any questions, reach out to my office at compliance@uvm.edu. Thank you, and welcome to the University of Vermont.